Well, for the Marines in the room, I have to correct him. There are no such thing as former Marines. They're just Marines. That's right. Just don't have orders.
Hey, what part of the Navy were you
I grew up in a little town called Homer, Illinois.
in?
Look back, it was a pretty good time to grow up. It was 1960s, 1970s. So if you go to the city, that was more like the 50s and the 60s. Longer hair was a big deal in my town, but had a great school system, a close community. People came home and they were able to find jobs. And my recollection is that the people that coached my teams and served on the school board were all Korean War and World War II veterans, and unfortunately, that generation's about gone. I decided I wanted to be a Marine when I was about 7th grade. I'm gonna set this down. Can you hear me? Okay. That bothers me. About 7th grade. My dad worked, Mom stayed home. There were 4 of us, and I guess you would say, I don't think we were poor, but we certainly weren't middle class. We didn't do without a lot, but we didn't have a lot of extras. My dad worked at a newspaper in the composing room and was an avid reader. And one of the treats you could always get from my dad was if you could buy a book. You couldn't buy a toy car, you couldn't buy a comic book. If you wanted a book, you could always find a way to get that. So they have these little, I don't know if they still do it. They passed out little magazines you can order books at school. And, I found a book in junior high. It was called Marine at War. It's written by a group of Marines in the Battle of Pelaway, which isn't a famous war, but it's one of the nastiest, awfulest places. And from that time, I thought, this is like, I wonder what they can do to take a bunch of farm guys from Illinois and city kids from New York, and in a very short period of time, get them to show such bravery and camaraderie. By the time I got out of high school, the 70s were here, post-Vietnam, and I couldn't get anybody to take yes for an answer to join the service, so I went to college on a football grant, not far from here, over at Eureka College. My knees started swelling. An idiot set 2 of our dorms on fire one night, so I took my exams, called my dad, and said, I'm from a small town, I'm in a small town, I'm from a small school, I'm in a small school. Should have looked at the school a little harder than the football program. It's a liberal arts college, and I'm a business thing, so I'm going to come home. And I did, and like a lot of 18-year-old guys, I got a job as a plumber's apprentice. We were working a lot of hours, and I was out a lot. Kind of struggling with that thing. I felt like I was making a lot of money, but not enough money to live on my own or get my own place. But frankly, I had a lot of beer money. My intention was to enroll at Parkland College, at local junior college, at semester, and get ready to go back to the U of I and get on with my life. Well, I woke up one morning and enrollments had closed, so now I'm going to do this another 6 months. Nothing wrong with being a plumber, but I didn't want to grow up and die in this little town. And I remember being at a coffee shop one morning, and 2 guys were probably retired farmers were talking about going to Hawaii, and from the sounds of it, they hadn't been much farther than Champaign County in their life. And we went back to the shop and it started snowing, so we're going to do inventory. And I told the guy, you don't have to pay me, but I'm going to take the day off. I don't like this busy work. So I drove to Champaign, found a Marine recruiting office and signed up, and drove home and said, I'd like to give you 2 weeks notice, but I leave in 9 days. And he was a little shocked, but there's nothing like the reaction my mother gave me. I have 2 kids of my own now, they're grown. And I'm really glad I didn't have to raise me. I can't imagine my 18-year-old son coming home and said he's made this life-changing decision without at least a little bit of conversation. But I did, because everybody was telling me I should go to college first and do something else, and why would you want to go to the Marine Corps? Well, I didn't want to make a career out of it. I just wanted to kind of try out for the varsity team. That's really what I thought. When he took the little test and the recruiters get the big book out and said, you want to be a Hawk Missile Systems guy or an IBM programmer. And I said, no, I want to be in the infantry. If you won't let me go to the infantry, I'm not going. That's hard to get. That's hard to get. But he's a pretty slick guy. He said, we can't guarantee anything for 3 years, but if you go 4, we can guarantee it. I Hey, what the heck, I'm gonna be 22 when I get out, right? No GI Bill. Just gonna go out for the team. I'm gonna travel the world. I'm gonna see what these Marine guys do. And then I did think, if people start shooting one another, it would be best to be the smallest guy in the battlefield. I mean, that's an infantry guy. But I wasn't looking to go to war. I just wanted to travel and see the world and do something unusual. I guess I scored pretty well when I went down to leave in St. Louis. This officer said, "Do you realize that your IQ is 135 and you volunteer for the infantry?" I said, "Certainly. And if you won't let me do that, I'm not going." He said, "Well, you're in combat arms." And I said, "Well, what exactly is that?" He said, "Tanks, artillery, infantry." I said, "No, look, I'm telling you guys, if you don't let me be in the infantry, I'm not going. I don't want anything tanks, I don't want anything artillery. I want to be in the infantry." And he said, "Did they tell you about the $2,500 bonus?" I said, "No, but if you give me money, I'll take that too, and I'll go." And I went to Camp Pendleton, and thinking, it's February in Illinois, I'm going to go to sunny California. Well, anybody's been in the service knows how much of the state you see from recruit training depot, whatever you can see through the chain link fence. It's not something I ever do again, but I'm really glad I did it. Things are different, but old guys always say that. When I enlisted, my uncles said how much tougher it was when they went through. And, I hear now that drill instructors can't curse. I don't know. I've been visited out there. I didn't see anybody's head blow up on the crane deck. I think they're probably cursing because I really think their heads would blow up. Again, I wanted to travel the world. Got assigned to infantry training school in California. And one day while we were waiting to go on, I think I was going to go on guard duty for a couple weeks before we started training. They had a formation, they called out Social Security numbers, and they said the following people are going to go to the 1st Marine Division for on-the-job training. I didn't have any idea what that was. And I guess I had in this mind I was going to be in a barracks with a bunch of like 30-year-old guys. And I thought they would all be, like John Wayne movies, they're all like middle-aged guys. And I got there on a 4th of July weekend, so what's left on a 4th of July weekend, the guys that had restricted the barracks, the feather merchants. This probably should have told me something about volunteering because they lost my orders. I didn't get paid for 6 weeks. I was having to have my dad wire me money. I got assigned to 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, which had been kind of cadreed after Vietnam. And anybody who's been in the service knows when you ask for volunteers from other units, they send you everybody they don't want. So we got filled up with other 4-year privates and people on the waiting for discharge. And I was really kind of disturbed because I come from boot camp where officers are godlike and drill instructors were devil-like, but everybody was squared away and knew what they were doing. And I was in this kind of rumpled up outfit. Kind of wondered, maybe I'd been sold a bill of goods. And then one day a guy named Irish Egan, who came and said he was taking over our unit. He was a captain. He was enlisted for 3 years, did 2 of those years in Vietnam, had 4 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star and a Bronze Star, and is very proud of the fact he did not have a good conduct medal. Again, military thing. If you go 3 years without getting court-martialed or having 2 non-judicial punishments, you get a little medal called a good conduct medal. And my new CO didn't have one. Highly decorated, but not have a good conduct medal. And he said if we were going to be the best unit in the Marine Corps, if we had to get down to 3 or 4 guys, and people started leaving. And I was very fortunate to have been in a top-notch unit with some very good officers. Anybody heard of Peter Pace? 4-star general, was Commandant of the Marine Corps and then the Joint Chief of Staff. He was my battalion S3. My CO became the Chief of Operations for 1st MEF. There are 2 other lieutenants in my unit that made general rank, and my old platoon commander was now retired Lieutenant Dennis Halick. He served in Iraq and stood up the Marine Corps Special Operations Command out of Quantico. And I think about it, I don't know if you could ever fall into a better mix after we got through the initial dusting. And I want to go somewhere, anywhere, but be in Pendleton. I volunteered for everything. And Captain Egan wouldn't let me go. He just said, "Nice try, you're not getting out of my outfit." I think he took a liking to me. I worked very hard. I was a sergeant with 20 months active duty. And after 2 years, you have to go somewhere. So I was going to go to Okinawa most likely. But I had a friend that had re-enlisted and went to embassy school, and I got a letter from him. And he's telling me if you went and worked hard, you could get your graduate top in the class, you get your choice of open posts in the world. So I volunteered for embassy duty, finally was picked up. You can't do it in a 4-year tour, so I had to extend my enlistment by 10 or 11 months because you have to have 3 years active duty left. And went and graduated top of the class. I wanted to go to Australia, so I had all my assignments around. You know, the Marine Corps won't fly you around the world just because you want to. So I was trying to get the hardship post near the good post, so if it hadn't be open when I was time to leave, I would go to Australia and spend a year and a half or so down there. My orders came, I'm going to Budapest, Hungary. Wrong side of the world. I knew where it was, didn't know much about it. It was behind the Iron Curtain, so I requested mass. Had a training, one of the training NCOs come and see why I wanted to see the colonel, and I explained it to him. He said, "Oh, we don't do that anymore. We used to do that. Now we send the top 10% of the graduates behind the Iron Curtain." It was a great, really, it was a great experience. It was a small post. There were 6 watchstanders, 1 NCOIC. We saw commissioned officers twice a year for inspections. We ran our own thing. You know, I'm barely 21. In charge, you know, second in charge of the embassy of the security of the United States Embassy. Close post, communist country, couldn't frat the locals, so the Western embassies were very tight knit, a lot of parties, had a lot of fun. No television, had to entertain yourself with other things. Had my appendix taken out. I'll talk about socialized health care. I got some stories about that. It was a little uncomfortable when I went in to see the surgeon when they finally got around to seeing me after packing me in ice for 12 hours. That I had to offer him a bottle of scotch and a carton of cigarettes and said there'd be a bottle of scotch and a carton of cigarettes if I ever got out of the place. And you know, even here, people die in a hospital every day. But here they don't wheel them down the hall in front of you. They don't hang a black flag out in the building letting know somebody died there. You go by a hospital, there's always a black flag. Somebody died today. Or you go by an apartment building, maybe one or twice a year. Recovered, and again, I wanted to do things in the Marine Corps you couldn't do as a civilian. I didn't want to go anywhere you could fly as a tourist. But I had enough seniority and rank that I was going to be assigned to the American Embassy in Rome. For an Embassy Marine, it's not a good post. It's large, like 27 watchstanders. You have NATO, you got the International Atomic Agency, the gazillion diplomats, and it's not a desired post. And the assistant gets to do everything the boss doesn't want to do, so usually the assistant on IC has to take care of the discipline and inspections, and I was kind of disturbed about that. I was going to have to go spend another 15 months in Rome. Out of the blue, we got asked for volunteers to go to a place down to Tehran. Been in the news a lot. It's in the news when I left Pendleton because they were starting to riot in California. The Shah, a lot of Iranians think the topography of California is very similar to Iran, I guess. Some of the Shah's family lived out there. And I thought, I'm kind of a history buff. I like to read. And I thought, what could be cooler than watch a revolution take place in the safety of the U.S. Embassy? I'll spend 6 months there, and I'll catch a third post, and maybe I'll get a good one on the way out. Before I left, they allowed the Shah to come to the United States. One of the communicators came to the Marine House where I was eating breakfast, getting ready to go on duty, and he said, "This is eyes only, but I thought maybe you should see it before I take it down for the ambassador." And he said that they had just allowed the Shah to enter the United States, and I thought, wonder will they send me when they overrun the embassy? Not a foreign policy expert, but it's pretty obvious. They shot the place up the previous February over a slight, but they didn't overrun the place. They waited one day after I got there, then they overran the place. I remember calling my dad. They gave me a free phone call because I was going to Tehran. I remember calling my dad, and he said, "You stupid, I told you not to be volunteering for all this stuff." He said, "How many times do you volunteer for stuff?" I said, "You'll be all right." I checked in the evening. Getting through the airport was interesting. Anybody seen Argo? Well, the airport's like that. Everybody's got a gun and a field jacket and a pair of jeans, and the police are sort of in the corner, standing out of the way, hoping to get their paycheck. And it's almost like a riot. People are so excited to see their friends coming, or their family coming back from Europe with all the stuff you can't buy in Iran, that I thought there was a riot right outside the gate. It was just people excited to see the relatives. We got in a van that was bulletproofed and sagged. No one even obeyed traffic. The lights are changing green and right. People are just going. A lot of sandbags, a lot of guns, a lot of scroungy-looking people with weapons. We got to the embassy and there was a demonstration. There was a American civilian, his name was Al Golshinsky, I found out later he was a security officer, was talking some guys out of shooting their way into the embassy because someone had taken down a Khomeini poster on the door, on the gate of the embassy. So we had to circle while that straightened out, and then I got in, and my boss, the Gunny Moeller, said, you know, when you check in the morning, don't come until about noon. We got this big demonstration tomorrow morning, and we're going to be busy probably till about lunchtime. He said sometimes they come over the wall, and we have to call the local militia to come and get them. And sometimes it takes a while. And sometimes they shoot at each other while they leave. So we did a walk of the grounds. And now this is the other thing. When I got my orders in Budapest, they said they're going to send 14 experienced watchstanders who had been on post before to go down and augment the 14 that are already there. So when I got there, I asked Gunny, I said, where are you going to billet all of us extra guys? And he said, what do you mean all you extra guys? I said, well, they told me 14 are coming. He goes, well, that's what we asked for. I said, you know, a little cut, little here. He said, you're it, buddy. So, didn't need a lot of extra room. We did a walk around the compound, and I found out that we had about 60 buildings to cover and 27 acres and 14 Marines. So there were fresh rocket, you know, RPG holes in the consulate building. There are craters in the open areas where the mortars had dropped in. I'm walking around. This is brand new to me, and I told them, I said, you guys like the frog in the water. You've been sitting in this warmed up, and now it's boiling, and you don't even know how much trouble it is. And everybody was pretty lackadaisical about this demonstration tomorrow. I said, yeah, sometimes they come over the wall, somebody comes and gets them, and we lock up and throw some tear gas, and it goes by. Well, the next morning it happened, and I was in the shower. Somebody kicked open the door and told me that they were overrunning the embassy, and we were supposed to go to the chancellery. By the time we got to our rally point, we were already cut off. Looked down, and I could see our local guards smoking cigarettes and talking to the attacking guards who were taking IDs. Only authorized protesters were allowed to get onto the compound. And so I was with 4 other Marines. And I happen to be the senior Marine in the Marine Corps. That's a big deal. So now I'm in charge, even though I've only been there a day. I literally had to dump a sea bag to get some utilities out to get dressed for the riot. Didn't pick up an ID, didn't pick up my passport, wallet, any of that stuff. So we went to the rally point, and I called the embassy and said, you know, we're cut off over here, but I think we get out the back of the apartment building, because they had us billeted across the street, which seemed kind of goofy to me too, instead of living on the compound somewhere. And they said, no, don't be scattered around. Help's coming. And we called and said, you know, the police are out there and everybody seems to be getting along pretty well. Nobody here is going to help us, apparently. But we were told to unbarricade the door so we didn't antagonize the attackers and to just wait in our apartment. We called them and told them we could hear them coming upstairs. When they came in the room, we destroyed our radios and we were captured. As we were being taken down the stairs, 14 or 15 policemen with automatic weapons kept us, stop us in the hallway and take us from the attackers. Now I'm thinking, let's make a pretty good letter home. I've been there one day, I got captured, got rescued. I'm 22, I don't have a real sense of mortality. And an argument breaks out between the police and the protesters, and then one of the policemen points his weapon, telling me to raise my hands again. I thought, he's going to capture me and take me back to the police station. I put my hands up and he left. And I began the next 444 days in captivity. I'm going to footnote this a little bit. A lot of people, there's 39 of us still alive. 52 started. Richard Queen was a 53rd. He was released early when he developed multiple sclerosis. A lot of people make this a bigger story than it is. And I don't like that. We're all debriefed. The story's the story. It's written down. We all gave the story in Wiesbaden on the way home. And we also all got a medal later. And honestly, when you read the declaration, it basically is a summation of your debriefing. Just keeping my luck intact, no one knew who I was. The Iranians didn't know who I was. I wasn't on the list of the embassy. Most of the Americans didn't know who I was. So So they decided I must be some sort of bald-headed, short haircut spy. And for about 45 days, I was held with the people that they accused of being intelligence people. Marines don't do a whole lot of POW training because you assume that you're not going to get caught, you're not going to be captured, you might get killed, you might win, you might lose, but you don't get captured. It was broached in embassy school, and they said, who wants to capture a Marine? They're going to get the first secretary or something, and you'll probably get shot, but nobody's going to capture you. We had the rules of conduct for POWs, and we were trying to decide, does this apply here? We have civilians. If you attempt to escape at every chance and give only name, rank, and serial number, you're going to cause any harm to others because of our being obstinate. A lot of the people around my age now, they had wives and families and things to worry about. But my big fear was if they really decided to torture me, and we had learned a little bit of, I'd read about POWs being held, is you can't lie. Because they're going to find out you're lying, and you're going to get a double dose to find out what the truth is. And you will tell them the truth if they're any good at what they do. And I was kind of wondering what I was going to do when they decided to cut my left index finger off, because I had nothing to give them. I didn't know the combination of the safe. I didn't know who anybody was. I couldn't even get in the front door. They must have ransacked our apartment. Somebody found my passport, and I went back to the general population. And through the first Christmas, it was a tough time. There was a lot of, that's when most of the abuse took place while the guards are trying to organize themselves. And of course, every day you're waiting for somebody to come and rescue you and hope you don't get shot in the rescue attempt, and trying to decide where you're going to get low when the shooting starts. But then one day, the people guarding us started bringing in military equipment, plastic, taking field jackets out of plastic covers and boots out of plastic, and utilities out of plastic. And I thought, that's when I really thought, I'm going to have to find out a way to deal with this, because that's government stuff. The government's not going to come and rescue us. There's no negotiation, there's no rescue coming on. And the open-ended of it's bothered me a great deal. I thought, how do I survive being locked up here, not knowing, I'm going to leave when I'm 23, 24, 32, and thinking, guys in Vietnam stayed 7, 8 years. And that troubled me a great deal. The other thing that bothered me is the complete lack of information from the outside. I read a lot, and I had nothing to do. I'm handcuffed, I'm tied up, and it makes a long day when you can't do anything. But then later on, the Iranians would come and tell us their version of the news, and you're trying to grasp onto anything you think of. And I got to tell you the truth, I was a little bit angry, because I thought, I don't know what in the world we're doing in this 27-acre compound with 14 Marines and 100 Americans to protect. I mean, didn't anybody tell them that we're kind of hung out to dry here? I was pretty upset with Jimmy Carter. I thought, that maybe they should have downsized this and put us in an office building someplace and not be quite so visible, or take us home. One of the things about being a Marine security guard is you are not allowed to fire your weapon unless it's the immediate defense of American life. We have no responsibility for outside security. If a local government doesn't secure the outside of the building, you're in trouble. You're going to be locking yourself in the vault and hoping somebody comes and gets you. If they don't come and get you, they'll eventually get you out of the vault. And that's the rules of engagement, and if you don't accept it, you don't get to go into duty. Nobody gets just fired a weapon because you decide you'd rather do that than follow the rules. But again, being young, isolated, and angry, I had to be very careful not to kind of fall into the news they were spinning around me. And I had to think, what am I going to do I need to find some way to cope with this. Well, one thing I did is, when they finally took the handcuffs and stuff off there the first couple months, I exercised for 6 hours. Did sit-ups, push-ups, ran in place. Whatever room I had, I could work out. The better I felt physically, the better I felt mentally. You just try to sleep it away, you become depressed and have difficulty. The other thing was I had to get on and grab something to sort of bring me back to reality. And I don't apologize for this. It wasn't God and country. I had to think, someday, and I need to believe this, someday I'm going to get home. I'm going to walk off an airplane. I'm going to run into somebody that served at a place like Iwo Jima, Pelaway, or was held in Vietnam. He said, I didn't dishonor this uniform. That's honestly the concept that took me through it. Was just saying, someday I'm going to put on a pair of dress blues or a green uniform, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to have to look people in the eye and say, I did not do anything that I shouldn't have done. Maybe I didn't do it well, but I didn't get my toe in the crack. The other thing was, the first Christmas came, and I decided that would be a perfect time for the Iranians to release us. We didn't get any priests, ministers. They wanted to say we got a bunch of left-wing radicals. Whoever Sloan Kaufman, I don't know if that idiot from Chicago was there or not, but some of them we recognized, and they certainly weren't our friends. And I convinced myself that they would ship us home with these visiting priests and ministers, and it didn't happen. And it was tough to kind of pull it all back together again. So John McKeel, a Marine from Texas, and we spent almost the entire time together. We decided that we would debate for hours and days on end to pick a date. It was a serious deal. We didn't have much to do, so we argued about this and exercised and ate and slept. And we pick a date. It could be 4th of July, Easter. But 30 days before the date came, we had to set another date that had to be established 10 days before the date we'd established before, so we never passed another date. Even when we were in the last weeks of being held at the foreign ministry in pretty good conditions, though they put bars on the windows, we were still wondering what would happen, what the next date would be if we weren't released on the inaugural. The election had already come and gone. I think most of the people there conducted themselves in a fairly decent manner. Again, I was only 22. Reality, mortality wasn't a concept I had a good grasp on, and I honestly thought the older guys, the families and the wives were kind of soft. They had a lot of time worrying about their wives and kids. Yeah, no, they'll be fine. Hell, they're back in the United States. We're here. There was a rescue attempt in April. We didn't know about that until the following July. We just knew something had happened and we were scattered throughout the country. While we were scattered, we all got dysentery. I went in and weighed about 180 pounds. By the time the doctors came to see the dysentery, I was down about 140. And took us back to Tehran and put us in a prison where we had better, I guess we didn't have the local fauna that was attacking us, and they cooked things a little bit better. And from that, after that first day, it was sort of the good guy, bad guy cop. They would try to get you to make a statement, and the bad guard would say the good guy can't come anymore, and kind of heavy-handed stuff. And we went, most of the time we went from, I guess like being a police officer, we went from complete and total boredom to just sheer terror. We did a couple mock firing squads, and I got to tell you, I was just hoping I could die with dignity, and I could die before I urinated on myself. Some people say they weren't afraid. Maybe they weren't. It scared the hell out of me. But most of it was dealing with the boredom and trying to get by. Something I didn't think about till I got home is my sense of time was wrapped up in a day there. In Wiesbaden, I think only 4 days. But it seemed like a tremendous amount of time because we had so many more events in the day. We saw doctors, we had debriefings, we got uniforms, we got haircuts. Well, in Tehran, you woke up, you ate breakfast, you exercised, you ate lunch, you took a nap, you exercised. We'd make cards out of a little piece of paper. Might play some cards, and you exercised. You had dinner, whatever they call dinner. Use as soup. It got dark, you went to sleep. Got daylight, you woke up. In the mushroom, you only knew it was light of day because they turned the lights on or off. The mushroom was a basement. It was a former communications center. Really depressing place because you never got to see the sun. They turn the lights on and off whenever they want to. When the lights are on, it was day, and the lights are off, it was night. The impacts, I've had a couple surgeries to repair my shoulders where they're dislocated with the handcuffing. Need a knee replacement, got some aches and pains, but it comes with getting old. But one thing that I can say that has kind of been a positive, I decided early on I was going to live through it. I was going to eat everything they gave me, even if I had to stop breathing while I swallowed. Breathing's a big part of taste. If you don't eat something disgusting and don't breathe, you don't taste it quite as much. I wanted to keep my weight up. I wanted to exercise, resist it, and go home in one piece. When I got home, and I have to admit it was much easier with the reception we came. I had no idea it was this big news. I thought local people would know about it, and in the military. When we landed Even in Germany, I didn't understand how big it was, because that's a military base. We expected those people to be thoughtful. When we came back to the United States, where people stood on the street for hours to watch us going on by a bus, that was overwhelming. You know, from Homer, Illinois, for crying out loud. My big publicity at that point is I got my picture in the paper for catching a touchdown pass in a football game. Now I have somebody sticking a camera in my face and saying, "It's NBC Live, what do you have to say?" Nothing. I don't have anything to say. But the reception made it a positive arrival, and I thought, you know, again, you have to look at this thing and get a grip on it. So I decided I was going to make it a strength. Nobody here has been through this. Not a single one of you in a room. I would venture to say that none of you have feared for your life more than a couple seconds or minutes at a time. There are POWs elsewhere, but they're a whole lot older than I am. So I think I have an advantage over you folks. As bad as it gets, I can say, you know what, it's always been worse than that. You can chug through this one. Downside is I hate to have things boil out of my control. I think that's maybe why I'm self-employed. I left the military, even though, you know, I kind of thought if you stay 6 years, you got to stay forever. I was at 5 years and some odd months. And I gave it a real hard thought, and I said, you know, I can now have an idiot cost me my life by sending me somewhere I didn't want to go. And that's, you know, you don't know who's going to get elected. They can't, you know, they don't have to be a brain surgeon. So, I guess you would say I become angry, have some flashbacks when people try to remove things from my control. And maybe that explains part of my life. I've spent 16 years as part of a local school board. I've spent 10 years being a park commissioner. I've coached teams. I've been on the zoning board. You know, I'm the guy that if you say we can't find anybody to do it, I'll say, okay, I'll do it until you find somebody. You know what happens then? They stop looking. You know, once you get a volunteer, you're not looking. I joke that, you know, I spent 10 years on a one-year term as a zoning board member until they found somebody. And I don't really mind if it bothers people. You know, I think, you know, if I've done the best thing I can do to be a part of my community and make a decision, and that's not good enough for you, take my place for it. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. You know, if you come up and say, I got a feeling you don't like me, and I don't, I'll say, you're right, I don't. So why are you talking to me? Because I do value honesty. And I don't know where I got this. I think growing up, you know, I'm not sure that the world has to be as complicated as it is. If you say no, what's there to talk about? I mean, what is the definition of it? I never got that. The Constitution's about a 14-page document. It's a limiting document. It doesn't say what it limits you to do. It says what it limits the government to do. Is there anything wrong? Is there anything mysterious about the First Amendment that says you can say what's on your mind and you have the right to worship as you choose? Or that other one. I always say I think when they wrote the U.S. Constitution, there's a flip up between what was first and second. I think the Second Amendment's to make sure the First Amendment applies. And I think the Fourth Amendment's important. I don't think anybody gets to listen to my phone calls or collect my metadata without a warrant or a cause. I think we've let government get away by being too busy about our lives. I like to come to groups like this, and you guys said, you know, enough's enough. We're not going to let this thing go anymore. And I wish, I'd like to see, you know, at least 10 groups that take care of the first 10 amendments. Does anybody know there were originally like 14, and only 10 of them passed? One of the amendments that's still alive, it could be, I guess they never died, the first 14. One of them is to limit congressional districts to a population no more than 50,000 people. Can you imagine what that would be like if you actually knew who your congressman was? You could see him in church in the street, and you think, you know, I mean, I don't know what my congressman, John Shimkus is my congressman. Never met the guy. I only know what I read about him, what the news tells me about him. I went to church with him and did business in his store. I think I'd have a better idea who they were. Maybe we need more congressmen, not fewer. But I think we need different ones. You know, maybe it'd be a messy legislature with 4,500 people. But you know, government that's messy doesn't move fast, does it? Look at us here in Illinois. It's a well-oiled machine. I just don't know where it's going. I don't know where I want to go. Now I know I've talked almost on the verge of being traitors, but I really think I think the founding fathers put the Second Amendment in the Constitution to make sure that people weren't forced into becoming sheep. And I think the best government is when the government fears us a little bit, not the other way around. And if, I spent the 13 months in Budapest, and they put you in prison for having a gun, unless you're a policeman or a military person. That's always I kind of wondered too. When I flew into Budapest, they had soldiers all along the airport. You know, are they afraid someone's going to roll up the airstrip, steal it? But you know, they put a lot of people in uniform. You see a lot of uniforms. Something that wouldn't have in the United States, we would watch policemen literally stomp someone unconscious on the street. Nobody even broke a stride. They just kept walking. When we came out of our booth in the embassy with a uniform and a weapon, Hungarians literally froze and were frightened of us. I'd hate to think that we would have to be like that. So, I'm not breeding secession, but I'm saying it's our country and we're responsible for it. We all want to be involved and want to make our thoughts known. Even though it might get you a tax levy. Anybody have any questions?
When are you running for governor?
I'm not.
Please.
You know, a long time ago, I did some work for, I don't know if anybody remembers Stan Weavers, the Senate minority leader from Urbana. You know, I think he ran for office in 1950-something. And he'd been trying to retire for a decade, but he couldn't find anybody to take his place. And I don't know, one day I saw him at a meeting somewhere, and he said, "Why don't you come by my office and see me?" Well, you know, that's being polite, right? I didn't think he meant it. And I was at work one day, and the phone rang, and he said, "Hey, I asked you to come by my office." And I didn't know who it was. I said, "Who's calling?" He said, "Well, this is Stan Weaver." He said, "I asked you to come by, and you never did come by." I've asked you a couple times. Well, I thought you'd be polite. He goes, "Well, I was, but I really wanted to talk to you." He said, "Can I drive down to your office and talk to you?" Well, you know, I'm straightening up papers, give her the order. And he said, "I'm looking for somebody that would like to get a little experience and maybe take my place someday. Would you be interested?" I said, "Shoot, I'm honored, flattered." This guy I thought a lot of. He was quiet legislator. We used to joke that he never passed a bill, he just passed some huge amendments. And to tell you how Springfield used to be back then, this is in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a poker game hosted by one of the leaders. And all the important players were invited to the poker game. Well, my first year of helping Senator Weaver as a legislative aide, I had a part-time job with him. He called and said, "You know, we're playing poker tonight." He said, "The Gold Dust Twins are making corned beef and cabbage, and we're going to play a little poker. Why don't you come down and bring your change?" Well, I had my little, I had a little tin can full of change. Penny any poker I played. And I'm wondering who the Gold Dust Twins were. Well, they're actually two old fat guys that cook corned beef real well. We call them Gold Dust Twins, but I think they were good lobbyists or something. But as I watched these guys, and I never got in the game either because there was no change at the table, it was all folded money and a lot of money. And they cheat a lot too. I noticed that they did cheat a lot. Somebody got way ahead. Suddenly, there's funny things happening with the cards. But they drank martinis and they played poker and ate corned beef and cabbage. And at the end of the night, the governor stopped by, and Jim Edgar stopped by. At the end of the night, 90% of the Illinois budget was done. The roads are done, the prisons are done. They all knew that they had to do this, so why not just get it out of the way, run it through committee, put it on the floor, it's going to pass. And then there are things that needed to be argued about, and they let those things be argued about. Gun control, whatever social issue people are upset about. But the budget was done that night. 80% of the budget was done. I don't think we ever get started in it. But anyway, I was thinking about doing this. My wife was adamantly opposed to it. We had a couple little kids. And I really thought about it. People like Stan Weaver stood for election. Now you have to run for election all the time. And you decide, why not run for governor? I'm not willing to give you that kind of time. I want to go home at night. I don't want to, I don't want to go to chicken dinners on Sunday. I don't want to be in 4th of July parades. I don't want to do it. And I wouldn't be a good politician. I'll do what I tell you I'm going to do, and if you're going to vote against me because they can come to your Farm Bureau meeting, you're just going to have to vote against me. Now I'm old, and I don't want to work that hard. I tell my son's going to buy me out someday, and he's was worried because he didn't think I'm ever going to quit working, because I like what I do. Kids here who tell people, when I retire, you will never find me on Friday nor any time in the month of February in Illinois. That's my definition of retirement. I don't have to stay here in February. I don't want him to come in on Friday or Monday unless I just want to. He's afraid I'll be wandering in on 86, just stirring things up. So, you know, I think the system is, I really think the system is required that we send these people. And the other thing is, you know, this legislation, you know, when they start making get invested in the pension, then they kind of like it. They're making $110,000 plus stipends and pensions, and you know, they make it a career. I don't think that ought to be like that. I think we have citizen legislators who go, you know, it's like being on a town board or school board. You go do it, you don't get paid anything, and when you're done, just get out of the way. After 4 or 5 years, you're sick of it anyway. Let somebody else finish it. Shouldn't be a career. And I admire this young man for wanting to run. But you know, I'll tell him, I've been young and been idealistic, and I'm a cynical SOB now. I really am. I think Congress does the right thing when everything else has failed and they're just flat forced. I don't think anybody does the right thing in government anymore just because it's the right thing. So you know, I've gotten cynical. That's the way it is. Any other question? No, I'm not politically correct. You know, I hate to do it, but I actually slipped and swore a couple of times. And I try not to do that, but you know, you start talking about the Marines, it just kind of happens a little bit. I'm very proud of the fact I did. If I had to give back 5 years of my life, I'd keep all 5 of those. You can't take out pieces of it. But I grew up a lot. You know, I look back and, you know, I was 20 years old at Camp Pendleton. I had 64 people working for me. We were responsible for several million dollars worth of equipment. You don't get to do that out here. And then when we weren't inventorying it and keeping records on one another, we fell out of helicopters. I was on the, I guess you'd say, the development, you know, things in Beirut were heating up. I got to go out to 29 Palms in the middle of the desert and try out all these rescue things that are done now. Now I watch it on television with special forces, and I think, you know, we must look like, it was like we were running out with spears and loincloths. Sometimes we had to have somebody run to the top of the hill to make the radio move. And we didn't have a little thing to get out and, you know, talk to a satellite bouncing around. Helicopters fell down the sky a lot. You know, it's just, you know, I guess it's like a World War II guy watching us talk on our cell phone. I think it's fantastic. I have a lot of respect for these guys today. You heard the young man talking about running for governor. I mean, you know, if you talk to a Vietnam vet that did 2, maybe 3 tours in Vietnam, that's a bunch. We have a lot of guys that spent half of the last decade in combat. That's a lot. It's an awful lot. I don't know how you ever think. So I have the greatest respect and admiration for anybody that served. Because, you know, you volunteer today, you know what's coming. You know, it's not trying out for the varsity team like I did. They're going to Afghanistan. They were going to Afghanistan or Iraq. So I respect all those guys, but I'll tell you what, I still love Marines. Thank you. It's been a pleasure coming out.